Pro Football Focus's Brad Spielberger joins me to talk Arizona Cardinals by the numbers through week 3 and an interesting comp to the Chicago Bears.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As mentioned, I'm joined today by Brad Spielberger at PFF_Brad on Twitter, friend of the show. I mean, I think he's in the inner circle here. I always bring on people smarter than me. That's my phrase, so I can just sit here and say dumb things and be corrected. But listen, Brad, welcome. This is not exactly where I thought we would be. I wasn't planning on having you on until the middle of the year when we started talking draft. After the win over the Cowboys on Sunday, in the fashion that it happened and how the Cardinals could potentially be 3-0 right now, it's just a weird thing that I'm trying to break down here. So first of all, again, dude, thanks for coming on. Give me your thoughts before we dive into some numbers here. What the hell is going on in Arizona this year?
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, competitive in all 3 games. Obviously, a massive win against the Dallas Cowboys. For me, if we're going to start with stats, the number one stat for the Arizona Cardinals, the most impressive thing they've done, they are 5th in the NFL on converting first downs into new first downs, around 24%. You're talking Miami, Seattle, a bunch of elite offenses, and then the Cardinals in 5th. And we love this stat at PFF. You know, there's always talks about, third down conversions and what teams are great at that. No, you want to get a new set of downs as fast as humanly possible. It is a sign of good offenses, of teams that are pushing the ball down the field, that are being aggressive in the way they call plays, and they're 5th. And so that's a huge one. They're great in scripted plays, which we just define as the first 15 snaps for either side. You know, Kyle Shanahan, I think, once said in a press conference, for him, it's 15. So I think we just stuck with 15, which speaks to coaching, right? Your pregame plan. Obviously, you're kind of more on the fly after that. But the plays you're scripting coming in on both sides of the ball, Arizona has been really good, which speaks to quality coaching and matters a ton. So those 2 things are huge for me. And the last one, I mean, they ran the ball down the Dallas Cowboys' throat on Sunday. I mean, 200 plus yards. That was awesome to see.
Absolutely. Everydayers, this is why we have him on at PFF_Brad. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. I wanted to get some stats in right away. So let's break this down. And it's funny you say that about third down conversion, because one of my most overblown, one of the things that I think is most overblown is fourth quarter comebacks. Good quarterbacks have teams that don't need to come back in the fourth quarter, which is kind of like that. Oh, Matthew Stafford, the greatest. Well, maybe don't be losing in the fourth. You won't have to come back. That third down conversion thing is interesting. And with such a huge, so let's back up a second here. So I had you on over the summer and we're like, well, we'll see what Monty Osford did in the draft, checked all the boxes. We don't really know about BJ Ojulari yet, still a little bit behind the curve coming off the injury. Garrett Williams hasn't been back yet, but let's talk quickly about Paris Johnson Jr. and Michael Wilson. So 2 guys who you and I were both very excited about coming out of the draft. Paris Johnson Jr. may have been a steal at 6. He definitely would have been gone by 12 if the Cardinals didn't trade back up. And Michael Wilson seems to be a diamond in the rough, a dude where the game's not too fast for him already. And you're playing with a quarterback who's never started more than 2 games before. And he's moving the ball down the field, broken play on Sunday against Dallas. One of my biggest issues at times with, just numbers in general is they don't necessarily correlate to the eye test. And if you look at Paris Johnson Jr.'s numbers through Pro Football Focus and otherwise, whatever metrics, it doesn't necessarily correlate to how good of a first 3 games he's had in his career. Like, what's the disconnect there? Like, what am I missing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is probably, we talked about it a bunch. He's going to grow as a pass protector. I'm guessing his pass block rate is not that great. Look, I mean, Broderick Jones isn't even starting in Pittsburgh, and left tackle Dan Moore Jr. is one of our lowest graded players in the entire NFL. Not to compare guys, not that matters, but I mean, Pittsburgh trades up for him. These were all developmental guys. These tackles were not immediate plug and play starters like we see some years. So I think that's the biggest thing. But for me, I actually agree with you. I haven't watched the film of this past week, but I watched week 2 in Arizona. Like I said, he is a special athlete in space. I've talked about that a bunch. And I think that's probably what you're speaking to. And we're talking about the run game a bit. their ability to pull him and have him be the first man, out in space, making plays, leading the way. You can't do that with a whole lot of NFL offensive linemen, especially, guys playing their first couple games. So it's going to get better. It's going to grow. He is losing some reps. They all are. Across the NFL, offensive line play is getting killed by defensive line so far this year. But yeah, it's 3 weeks. I'll tell you, a 3-week PFF grade, give it time. It doesn't really matter. We need a full sample. He's a good football player.
For sure. Yeah. And that wasn't a knock at PFF. It's just like, I'm trying to find the hole so I can discuss like what the things that he can get better at. I mean, there were no quarterback hits in the first 2 weeks. I mean, last week he got beat by Micah Parsons twice because Micah Parsons isn't human. Like, there are things like that. But overall, what we've seen so far through Monty's draft that you lauded louder than many was it's working. And that's really just the cohesion in place that we've seen in Arizona. I talked in yesterday's show, like, I've never been more excited a week after a game by the Cardinals, win or loss, since taking over the podcast than I am today and yesterday, because it's different. Bradley, it's different. Like, I say the restrictor plate has been taken off this organization with Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury gone. Kyler Murray's happy. He's not even playing. Jonathan Gannon, cool, calm, fire in your belly, bus car, doesn't matter. He's just negating all of what the naysayers have said up until this point. Now, I ask you, you have the NFL in a much more national lens than me, obviously. Is there a way to tell from a new coaching staff that things are different this soon? Or could this be, I call this a Nate McMillan effect. Nate McMillan is the best interim head coach in the history of the NBA. He gets contract extensions, first year's fine, and then he gets fired. It's just what happens, rinse and repeat. Because new head coach, new energy, new fire, new schemes, whatever it is. Is this that? Or have you seen enough from this coaching staff where it's like, holy bleep, like this is something that really could work if they could hang on to the coordinators without them taking head coaching jobs in 2 years?
I don't think it's that, but it is fair to have caution. I mentioned the scripted plays, which I do think is one of the biggest, look at coaching, because they're actually planning this out. And to present caution, the Bears led the NFL in first drive scoring last year. They're now, the worst team in the NFL. But why I think, it is not just that. You have guys that have been there for a couple of years, not just the draft picks. I mean, look at the edge rushers. Like Dimukeje is playing well. Cam Thomas is playing well. You're seeing growth and good play from guys that under previous tutelage were not put in positions to succeed and were not playing good football. But you realize maybe it isn't their fault. Obviously, the Cardinals, more than any other franchise, asking guys to do what they're not good at doing the last couple of years has kind of been their MO. So I think that's a huge part of it as well. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a fluke. I love now in hindsight, bringing over, was it Drew Petzing? Is that his name? Mm-hmm. Yeah, had experience with Josh Dobbs, a young offensive play caller. You mentioned hopefully doesn't get poached. Frankly, he might if he keeps playing, if they keep scoring like this. But yeah, clearly, Gannon, it's funny. We make fun of all the quotes, and yeah, he's awkward. Yeah, he's goofy, whatever. So was Nick Sirianni, his former boss. And I don't think anyone in Philadelphia is mad about that hire anymore. Like, at the end of the day, and the McDaniels, et cetera, of the world, if they can relate to the players, and more importantly, they can win football games and convince these guys, look, am I corny? Am I weird? Sure. Am I going to maximize your talent and maximize your career? Yes. Then they don't care. Make as many bad jokes as you want. They could care less.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike McDaniel is my biggest comp for Jonathan Gannon. It's like, who cares? Mike McDaniels last year was, somebody referred to him as the son taking over the team when his dad's out of town. Like, that's how he reacts. That's how he handles this thing. Like, he's having fun, and they're making waves in South Beach. And with the Cardinals, they needed such a culture shock and shift that I'm continuously checking myself to think, is it just because it's different that you're excited, or is it just because it's different and competent and well-versed and cohesive that makes it different? And I think as through 3 weeks, it's got to be the latter. We'll see what happens in San Francisco on Sunday, but by all accounts, this is a completely different organization. Now, you are a Chicago Bears guy, okay? I want to talk in the next segment. I wasn't even planning on doing this, but I think it's important for some correlation between Chicago, Carolina, and Houston, Arizona, with a massive shift over the last 8 days, 10 days, of which you'd rather be And we'll hit that next. Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus joining me. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by eBay Motors. So here's the thing. Our partner at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's see who Vinny picked for all of us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Ravens rookie receiver Zay Flowers had a fine debut in week 1 before a modest week 2. You know, here's the thing. Like, with Zay Flowers, there is so much potential for him. He fits this perfect mold of a little Hollywood Brown, a little OBJ. He's a possession receiver. He's a deep ball threat. He does everything in between. And with Vinny Iyer telling you, you should listen, start your boy Zay Flowers. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts from your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Second segment, Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Everydayers, thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked on Arizona Cardinals, hit the subscribe, like button, leave a comment, chill with me. It's going to be a fun year, and it's the NFL's full of surprises, baby. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus at PFF_Brad joins me, contributor to OverTheCap.com. We will be talking salary cap at the end of this year going into the offseason. I don't think it's necessarily a conversation that's on topic for now. But there will be a massive shift that way, too, with the Arizona Cardinals having cap space going into 2024. Chicago Bears, Justin Fields, Matt Eberflus, Ryan Pace. It's not working. Something's not working. Brad is a known Bears you're not an apologist. You speak words about the Bears a lot. Let's just put it that way. Okay, it's a great follow on Twitter, and the reason why I want to discuss this is the balance that's now turned into like a one-team race to getting the number 1 overall pick with a 1-loss difference in the loss column. 3 weeks into the season with 14 games to go. What is the biggest glaring difference between the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears that you'd see?
You know, I would argue there are 2 defensive head coaches, which obviously in today's NFL, sometimes people, kind of poo-poo in a general sense. Neither roster has a ton of defensive talent. That is, goes without saying. The Bears are dead last in literally every single defensive. You could make up a new defensive metric and they would rank dead last in it. And I actually do think Matt Eberflus in a lot of ways is a solid coach, but I mean, this year there's just no adjustments, right? They are near the bottom of the NFL in blitz rate because it's not really his MO. Okay, but you can't generate pressure to save your life, so try something new. They sit back in soft shells exclusively, which, look, both of those things are kind of Ganon-esque to a degree, but I think you see him adjust on key downs or against certain opponents. Like, real quick to him, he just played 2 play callers that he faced twice a year in Dallas and New York. And yes, the Giants had an awesome second half and all that. But, Brian Daboll's a good football coach. But, that also stands out as, they didn't know how to expose him. I mean, he beat both of them for 6 quarters. So it's really, really encouraging where I think there's just more flexibility, more adaptability. I'm not trying to trash Matt Eberflus, but he is clearly a guy that's, I have a system. It's worked for me before. I'm going to go find talent that fits exactly what I want to do. And I'm going to adjust nothing of what I do. They just need to get better at doing my thing. And that is just not how you coach in the NFL in 2023.
Yeah. And I mean, somebody letting Justin Fields know you got to get rid of the ball a little bit faster may help. That's just me. And I will say one thing, DJ Moore is the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL. This is just one bad situation to another where Justin Fields, this kind of came out of nowhere. Justin Fields hucked it like, listen, you know obviously much more about this than I do. This is not Locked On Bears. Lauren Cox, Locked On Bears got you covered here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It seems it's very Cliffy for me over there. It's like you don't really know why things are wrong. They're wrong on the offensive side of the ball, at least. And it's like, it's kind of, when you're looking over in Arizona, it's like everything is working in synchronicity. It's not always pretty because it's Joshua Dobbs, but they're getting the most Kyle Shanahan-ian, whatever out of their quarterback. And it seems like when you have that system with some, syncopation, with some jazz in there where not everything goes to plan all the time, but it seems like everything is just adult. Everything is just NFL. And then in Chicago, it's just not. I mean, Justin Fields is, by all accounts, a talented quarterback, and just things aren't working. So is it, let me ask you this, and then I'm going to pivot to one more thing before I let you go here. Is that coaching, or is that Justin Fields? Is that roster? You can't say that the Bears roster is way less talented than the Cardinals. I mean, it's probably tied, maybe err on the side of Chicago. What is it in Chicago that's the problem?
So look, it is all of the above. The first caveat, the talent caveat. I mean, they are missing 4 offensive lineman starters. The one starter they do have is the rookie Darnell Wright, the right tackle. But then again, while I agree with the DJ Moore point, and it's not his fault, he did drop an absolute pearl of a throw from Justin Fields against the Kansas City Chiefs. Like the best throw he's probably made this entire season. And of course, Moore can't come down with it. But Luke Getz, the offensive coordinator, again, just like I talked about Eberflus. They are a drop back passing offense. They don't roll him out. He has 7 design runs the entire year. And it's so bizarre because you saw a shift last year in that New England Patriots Monday Night Football game where they ran him a ton because they're playing a bunch of man coverage. And look, I get the Chiefs. You're down 14 before you can even blink.
Right.
But that's Steve Spagnuolo plays a bunch of man, is a team that running quarterbacks can take advantage of, have taken advantage of, and they just abandon it as they've done all year. So absolutely the play calling and what they're trying to do is just not catered to his skill set whatsoever. Yes, there are issues with some of the playmakers around him, but frankly, his weapons are pretty good. But also, I'm not going to let him off the hook. The processing is really, really slow. And it's just his footwork is slow. He gets to his drop late. His processing, he's leaving open receivers, untargeted a lot of the time. But at the end of the day, it is an all of the above thing. I'm not going to put it at Justin Fields' feet, but he does deserve some blame.
And the reason why this has turned into a pseudo Locked On Bears segment is there's a purpose here. Is for those that think the Cardinals are behind the curve just because the talent isn't necessarily there now. This is proof of concept for the future, for when Kyler Murray comes back, for when they infuse talent in 2024. And if you ask national media members, you do a poll on Twitter, X, whatever, I'm never calling it X, ever. Would you rather be the Arizona Cardinals or the Chicago Bears for the next decade? I have a sneaking suspicion the Cardinals would win that in pseudo landslide right now. Just from what we've seen through 3 weeks, and just from what we've seen as that feels too Kingsburyan for me to see, that's something that can be tweaked just with a couple different, just with different pieces or whatever it may be. So, Brad, 10 years. And this is, let's get ridiculous. Who cares? It's Tuesday or Wednesday. Would you rather be the Bears or the Cardinals for the next decade with things in place as they currently sit?
So the question I thought you were going to ask was about the draft pick situation where everyone said, Arizona's going to pick
first
and second.
One.
Yeah, where everyone's like, Arizona's going to pick first and second. Houston and CJ Stroud look pretty good. I think Carolina and Chicago might be 1-2. So that, I guess, is in favor of Chicago. They both have 2 first-round picks. They both have a ton of cap space. But, look, I love Caleb Williams. I like Drake May a lot. I like J.J. McCarthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We agree. Kyler Murray's a dude. People forget that Kyler Murray is a dude. And now we're seeing what a good coaching staff and a good offense can do if he comes back and is healthy and trusts his scrambling, trusts his ability to kind of move around a little bit, which I think he lost even before the ACL tear. I think once he had that injury in 2021, he kind of went away from it. But the answer is Arizona by a landslide, right? Because if you do drop a franchise quarterback into this mix, you get Ojulari back, you get Garrett. Well, we talked about too. You drafted those guys not to play right out of the gate. That was the purpose of drafting those players. Yeah, no, it's Arizona for sure. It's not even a debate.
For those who have listened to this podcast for a while, adjustments is a word that I've used a lot that Brad used that isn't happening in Chicago. And that's one of the biggest things showing growth with this new regime is learning on the fly in real time. And it's something that I'm not used to being on this side of the conversation with. So Bradley, thank you for that. Yeah, dude, you're the best. Thanks for coming on. Follow Brad on Twitter at PFF_Brad. Great content. He's everywhere. One of the rising stars in this crazy world of sports that we live in. Brad, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you a ton.
Always great stuff with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Coming up next, what does all of that he just said mean for the Cardinals? I'll recap as we roll on here on Locked on Cardinals. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by Jace Medical. Okay, so Jace Medical is definitely something special. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Again, get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Final segment, Alex Clancy here. Great stuff by Brad Spielberger. Again, follow him at PFF_Brad. One of my good friends in this industry. Fantastic job breaking stuff down numbers-wise, outside the numbers-wise. And it seemed like, and I wanted to do this with him because I knew that he, is well ingrained in the Bears as being a fan and obviously working and covering them that way in some respect. I wanted to do that segment to kind of just show it as a litmus test for where the Cardinals are and where the Bears are. Justin Fields, I saw something ridiculous. And Justin Fields had some of the highest numbers of tickets to win MVP in 2023, which is funny. It's very Cliff Kingsbury over there. Matt Eberflus was fantastic in Indy. Okay, then took over Chicago. Justin Fields hasn't necessarily made it easy on him this year. They've upgraded on offense. They've declined on defense. And it just feels weird. It feels like there's a Grand Canyon between the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears. And the Cardinals are 1-2 and the Bears are 0-3. Like, it's not like this massive loss discrepancy. The Cardinals still can get the number 1 overall pick. We have no idea what's going to happen. They have a murderer's row coming in with the 49ers. They play the Bengals. They play the Ravens soon. Like, they've got tough tests coming up without Kyler Murray. And if somehow Kyler Murray miraculously is ready to play in week 5 when he comes off the IR, we're having a different conversation. But the Cardinals are going to be neck and neck with them, with Carolina, for that top pick with Houston, whatever it may be. But I'd much rather be where the Cardinals are now than where the Bears are. And it's easy to say, like, say the Cardinals would have got blown out by Chicago. Maybe we're having a different, or by Dallas. Maybe we're having a different conversation. But if, regardless, again, of the final win-loss total for the Arizona Cardinals, if they play the way that they've played the first couple weeks, regardless of outcome, level-headed, cohesive, adjustable on the fly, things like that, you'll take that 100 times out of 100 over a team that's in flux that may get the number 1 overall pick. Because remember, as Brad so eloquently said, Kyler Murray's a dude. He's the guy. Look around the NFL at how much bad quarterback play there is. The slander on Kyler Murray is wild to me. It's wild. And it's easier to do now because he hasn't played in 10 months. Easy to say. Can we keep going back to that, the underhanded bad decision he made in the end zone against the Rams? They were going to lose that game anyways. That didn't matter. And Rondale Moore was kind of open. I could see go back and look at the thing. Like, it wasn't like he was just throwing it to the other team. He was trying to make a play and not take a safety. But anyways, I'm not defending that. But the Cardinals are in a good situation because very rarely in a rebuild is a QB1 already on the roster. And you can say Kyler Murray's not the guy. That's fine. Whatever you say, whatever you think is fine. I will say, go back to that Raiders game, week 2 of last year. Tell me he's not. Tell me he's not special. Until we see him in an adult NFL offense, we have no frame of reference on the ceiling that he has, if there is one, with how great he can be in the NFL. I'll leave you with that. Crossover Thursday, tomorrow, with Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers. Again, some of my closest friends in the Locked On family. I'm excited always to chop it up with them. I'll talk to you tomorrow.